And hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I don't see a picture. Very typical for us to have some kind of a technical glitch. There it is. Everything seems to be working now. And what you are looking at is our first person Kriegsspiel module. Something I would say hastily threw together, but it took me quite a bit of time to accumulate the assets, kind of scale everything, and then lay everything out. Um, it's not terribly pretty, but it is functional. But it is a World War II first-person Kriegsspiel shooter, and we have some Russian riflemen soldiers here who are going to be playing, and we've got about 20 participants or so, a little over 20, and we got some German infantry here, and they're going to be in playing, and it's really cool. The Russians are actually animated. You can change their state and other things. It's kind of cool. Um, the Germans not so much, which is why we have the different little states, but whatever. But in any case, it kind of brings up a question, and this is a question that we get often: is can I do this kind of a Kriegsspiel or that kind of a Kriegsspiel? What can I do? And the answer may surprise you, but in order to appreciate the answer, I think we have to really talk a little bit more about what is Kriegspiel exactly. What is it? What's the point of the exercise, and so on. And hello, Dave, who is on the live stream. Good to see you there, Dave. Let me take a look here in. I want to also keep track of our Discord. We got people who watch us on two different channels. One is Discord, one is YouTube. And anybody who wants to speak, just raise your hand. Let me know. I want to hear about you guys or hear your opinions. So feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak or contribute something to the conversation. In any case, Kriegspiel, prior to Kriegspiel, they did a couple of things to train officers. One was staff rides, which, they would go out in a group of officers, they'd look at some terrain and say, imagine this is the battlefield, what would you do? And that was pretty cool. I think that should still be done today. That makes a lot of sense. It's very logical. They also had kind of like this precursor to Kriegspiel that a lot of people don't know about, or maybe too many people know about, because I get this from both directions. People who think it's this chess game. Avalon Hill Gaming Company came out with this chess game with some particular rules, and it wasn't really chess. It was really played on a chessboard with chess pieces or whatever, but the Prussians came up with this kind of precursor game where you kind of move these pieces around, and the idea is really to get people to think about strategy and get them to think about combined arms and strategize. But it wasn't Kriegspiel. It was a very abstract game, and it probably didn't do what they really wanted it to do. Hence, Kriegspiel was developed. Now, Kriegspiel was this system developed during the Napoleonic Wars for the training of Prussian army officers during the Napoleonic Wars and after. So the system is always conceptualized in people's minds as this Napoleonic gaming system. That you're going to take these blocks that represent the formations, you're going to move them around, and there's going to be a Napoleonic battle. But what happens if you want to take and simulate other things? Can it be done? And that gives rise to the question, what is a Kriegsspiel? What is Kriegsspiel? Now, I don't know if there is an established academic definition, because there's no like master or lord of Kriegsspiel. There's no like central Kriegsspiel authority. And if there is one, it's probably at this point the International Kriegsspiel Society, because we got people from all over. We have academics, we have veterans, we have gamers, we have history buffs, we have Napoleonic warfare buffs, and other people from all over. And we've kind of congregated into this one big online community. And there's other communities now that have branched off from us that are doing their own little things. But there's really nobody who says this is what Kriegsspiel is. I, of course, have my opinion, and I'll tell you, and I think my opinion is going to be met with wide agreement to put it that way. Um, Specifically, Kriegsspiel is a double-blind umpired system. It is played on maps using blocks. Their orders are delayed, and there is an emphasis on fog of war. Combats are resolved by whatever means, typically dice. Now, there's a lot of room for debate and variation. For example, for me, I say it should be played with blocks, but I don't always play it with blocks. Now, am I playing Kriegsspiel? And there are people who will use miniatures. So I think I would have to say traditionally it's played with blocks, but you can use other things. But I still think a lot of these other things are Kriegsspiels. There's fantasy Kriegsspiels that I've seen. I mean, heck, I could even take you on a cool tour. Achilles says, "I thought you were the master of Kriegsspiel," and it's like, well, I am Achilles. I just don't want to be, be. What was I gonna say? Uh, be that conceited, right? Let's take a look here. Here's one. Here's a fantasy Kriegsspiel, and I don't want to. Let me just hit the welcome thing here. But this is a fantasy Kriegsspiel, and it's the Vampire Wars, and I don't know. I'm almost hitting. I don't want to give away any game, but I have observer status. But you can see here on the left, it's kind of like this vampire stuff, and it looks like we have werewolves or wolves or whatever, and other things. And oh, look, the Skaven. We have the rat people and stuff. This is a fantasy Kriegsspiel, okay? So that's what we've got going on there. So it can be done. Here we have a naval and let's see here. Well, no, let's go. Let's go here to general discussion. Here we have a World War II naval Kriegsspiel, and in fact, if you watch the movie Midway, by the way, there is a naval Kriegsspiel that was famously played by the Imperial Japanese Navy prior to the Battle of Midway. And of course, the Japanese won handily in their Kriegsspiel, which tells you that sometimes the system is only as good as its umpires. Here's the 805th Bombardment Group, and we, did a bunch of missions here. And this was the closest thing to a first-person Kriegsspiel I had done previously. Yeah, we had all these cool little things here. We had players in their bombers, and each player commanded a bomber individually. And they didn't get a whole lot of choices, but they sometimes did. They'd have problems, and they had to make decisions. How do you react to that, and so on. And so on. So we have a lot of this. There's a Civil War, obviously. We've played World War II and other things. And here in the IKS Test Kitchen, we are testing out, again, first-person Kriegsspiel, in which we have two sides that are attacking each other, and they are Russian and German, and each player represents a soldier, an individual soldier. So I'm trying to go through those without giving away too much game. I think unless you try really hard to glean some information out of pausing the stream. And if you're trying that hard, you're basically trying to cheat. And so don't do that. But I don't think I gave away too much game to anyone. But in any case, this is what we're doing. So we have this Kriegsspiel in which, we've got each player representing a soldier. I don't know where, see, the module's kind of wonky. But each player represents a soldier. And, well, that's not a good start. Look, they rocked the house. And the soldiers then are positioned, in different places. And they give their first-person orders. And they move about and interact as they would on the battlefield. And the cool thing is, for this scenario, I have at least one committed, maybe a second veteran umpire, people who are actually trained in infantry combat and are combat veterans, and I want them to kind of do the umpire resolution stuff. I can help and move stuff around and so on, but I was never in the actual military. I was only in the Cola Wars, which doesn't count, right? Although I did get a discount at the movie theater for saying I was in the Cola Wars, so riddle me that. But I want those guys who have some experience to say, well, yeah, this guy here, he gets hit. He's kind of out in the open. He's exposed. He gets hit. And then the players, we play what's called dead is dead, meaning that when your character dies, you die, but if you survive, you go to the next battle. You could be promoted or awarded a medal or whatever, and you'll be given command over other troops. And so it's kind of this merit-based system where you string along from event to event to event, and everybody kind of gets to participate and have fun and do a little bit of role-playing along the way. Which, remember, Kriegsspiel is also the great-grandfather of Dungeons and Dragons, which is a first-person Kriegsspiel, essentially. And it's role-playing heavy, and this here is bordering on Dungeons and Dragons. This here is really at that level. We've almost transitioned from Kriegsspiel to D&D because of the heavy roleplay element, which is also very similar with our Red versus Blue campaign, in which we're doing something similar, in which the players manage nations, and it's heavy on the roleplay. Is that still Kriegsspiel? and I think there's a blurry line. All things are a spectrum. I don't think there is a clear line that delineates what's in and what's out. And we can fudge on some of the elements, like using blocks, maybe even using maps. Although I don't know, I think maps are pretty important to the experience and the exercise. Delayed order implementation, sometimes, you don't really have delayed order. We did a Star Wars event, and kind of everybody, kind of saw more or less what everybody else was doing, and the communications took place in real time, which is a peculiarity, but, it's set kind of in this high-tech universe or galaxy far, far away, if you will, where that information is available to people. And so we simulate that. At the end of the day, though, I think if you create dilemmas, if you create some command friction, if you create an environment where there's still limited information, there's still fog of war, you still have these challenges that a military commander would face, I think more or less you are playing Kriegsspiel, regardless of what assets you use to build the environment or the world, the battle space, I guess. I do think that you're playing. So let's take a look at some of the comments here. And let me pop into, where is the, oh my gosh, I have to go back to my stage. Here we are. And here's Peter, and here's Tony. Good to see you guys in there. And over here we have Achilles and Robert. Good to see you guys. Let's take a look real quick at some of the comments and see if there's comments or questions. Otto says, come play in today's World War II Sunday Kriegsspiel game. Although there you will command platoons and companies instead of World War II D&D. That sounds like a pretty fun time. I've played Otto's World War II system, and it is an excellent system. And so he's getting free advertising on Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. Can you believe that? I think we should charge him, guys. But it's definitely worth playing, definitely worthwhile. He's probably one of the finest umpires he has. If I were to pick our best umpires, Otto and Blaze Trail are definitely at the top of the list in terms of the quality of the experiences that they produce. So, definitely worth playing. Achilles says, good morning all. I thought you were Master of Kriegsspiel. I am. And then he says, well, okay, actually, it's Artemis that is the real Master of Kriegsspiel. But that is the best kept secret in the IKS. Well, not anymore. Not now that you put it out all over YouTube, Achilles. Robert says, I now know how umpires feel with taking orders. Please, guys, can you be any more vague? Yes, absolutely. Simple, clear, concise, to the point orders is really what we want. In fact, Kriegsspiel was originally devised as an exercise in giving orders, in writing orders. And that order component, I think, is pretty critical. And a lot of times players don't give clear, concise orders to the umpires. They give very vague orders, or they give orders with branching logic. And typically when the decision time, or the time between decision points, is like 15 minutes or an hour or 6 hours or a day, when a lot of things can happen in that space of time, players feel more inclined to say, I want to do this, but if this happens, please do this instead. And you get that branching logic. Now, actual Kriegsspiel is played in 2-minute increments. We typically play in 15-minute increments just because it kind of keeps the game moving and it works for us. The Kriegsspiel 2022 system moves in 5-minute increments. It's a compromise because when I developed the system, I'm like, we really do need to get closer to that 2-minute system. But if you play at 2-minute increments, you'll never finish a game. So you got to play maybe at 5 minutes as a compromise, and that kind of works for that system. Um, but yeah, players will do that with their orders. They will go all over the place. And they get real crazy and fancy sometimes. I had one guy saying, I'm going to do this, this, and this to kind of bait and trap the enemy in this game that we're running. And I'm not going to get any more detailed than that. The player knows who they are if they are watching this podcast. And it's like, whoa, dude, okay. I mean, we'll give it a try. So, that's the thing. The other fun part about Kriegsspiel is it tends to be pretty open-ended, so you can do whatever you want. But yeah, it's tough on the umpires sometimes. Let's take a look at some of the other comments. Achilles says we can try. He's going to try to give some more vague orders. Before the attack on Pearl Harbor, Robert says, they are playing squad leader on the USS Nimitz. Okay, that's kind of funny. I don't know what that means. I'm pretty sure the game came out long after World War II, but maybe they put that in there or something. I don't know. It wasn't something I noticed. Wait, Nimitz was not in Pearl Harbor. Nimitz was a nuclear aircraft carrier, modern. Is this the what's that movie where they go back in time? There's this movie where an American aircraft carrier goes back in time prior to Pearl Harbor. Maybe that's what they're referencing. Anyway, either way. Achilles says the Japanese also Kriegspieled an operation in the Indian Ocean where they expected 5 British carriers and they sank all 7 of them. That over optimism, right? When you're playing Kriegspiel for political reasons, I guess like the Vietnam body count, that number just kind of always goes up every step along the way. Let's see here. Robert says, try as hard as you want. I have the game open in front of me right now. I guess Robert's running something. Dave says, sounds like this game is kind of like men against fire rules. If you're talking about this particular game, we don't have a rule set for it. It's going to be Bogsat. And Bogsat is a bunch of old guys sitting around a table. And I'm going to let the veterans tell me who gets eliminated, who gets hit. I do think we should be rolling some dice so that it's not arbitrary. Basically, we kind of need to come up with some kind of odds for that. But at the end of the day, I'm not combat trained. So, I would be the dumb guy who stands right in front of the window looking out for the enemy. You know? I mean, so I would have our expert umpires render the decisions here and I think that would be kind of fun. But yeah, there is no particular rule set for this. We will probably develop one though as we play. Like there'll be some basic rules that we come up with again to eliminate arbitrariness. When I devised the SoCal system for Kriegsspiel, which is essentially free Kriegsspiel but with dice reintroduced, the reason I brought the dice in was to remove the umpire from that particular part of the equation. I wanted the dice to determine the outcomes, not an umpire who might be motivated with a particular outcome. Because umpires are human too. They get attached. They get attached to underdogs. They get attached to their friends who may be playing. They get attached to the side that does something particularly well or whatever. They form these attachments, which is also why, particularly in in-person Kriegspiels, I actually rotate the umpires mid-game. I make them switch sides and umpire the other team. So that's done for a reason. Let's see here. Achilles says it is more difficult to give concise orders when you are an individual in some ways, since you are describing your actions. And the answer is yes. Robert comes in with the answer. The movie is The Final Countdown. And I saw that movie again like a year or two ago. I remember that. But I've seen it 2 or 3 times, but I couldn't remember the name. But thank you, Robert. Peters says Kriegsspiel is just anything that doesn't come with the rule book. Now, I would disagree there. I mean, look at Monopoly, right? How many people actually read the Monopoly rules and play it correctly? They're basically playing without a rule book. But they're not playing Kriegsspiel, not by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but maybe Peter's just thinking about wargaming without a rule book. And in that case, you might be there. But I still think there has to be simultaneous turn resolution. There has to be some kind of double blind element to some degree. You know, so I think those are essential to Kriegspiel as well. So if you're playing a hex encounter game where everybody sees the map and you're taking turns as opposed to simultaneous, so, now the Union moves, now the Confederacy moves, and stuff like that. It's in no way a Kriegspiel, you know. Um, so I would have some beef with that, but there you go. Peter is in the audience. Maybe I should let Peter defend himself, right? And that would give me a break from talking. You guys have heard me go for 15 minutes here. I'll invite him up, and if he wants to speak, he can pop in. If he doesn't, oh, there he is. He's sitting there like white on rice. It's Peter. Peter from the
It,
audience with the
it,
steel chair.
it's Peter come to defend himself, so if I'm not going to defend myself, really, you're absolutely correct. I was going to say that Kriegsspiel is like life. It doesn't come with a rule, but I was just going to say something nice and flashy, basically.
Absolutely. Well, understanding what it is, I think, helps us to kind of figure out, what's kind of in and what's out. And I know for a while, and on occasion, we'll have people come into the IKS and play different games. For example, we're talking about a disaster Kriegsspiel, in which we want to simulate a natural disaster somewhere and the responses to it. And is that a Kriegsspiel if the enemy is nature and if it's kind of cooperative and you're not pushing military units, but you're pushing units of first responders, or you have someone who's playing a political role? Is that a Kriegsspiel? And I think that's a good question. There's this game that Jan has played called Aftershock, and I think Jan and Justin have both played it. And there are a couple of members of the IKS who are quite prominent and active if you aren't familiar with the group and you're watching the live stream. And the game itself is definitely not a Kriegspiel, it's card driven. But if you take some of the mechanics of that and you move it over to a map, and you play on a map, and you have different people at different levels of command, so there's some command friction going on, and you have delayed order implementation, and you have fog of war because you don't know what Mother Nature is going to throw at you next. Um, is that a Kriegspiel? And I think you're kind of on the frontier of what could or could not be a Kriegsspiel. Um, but it's interesting to kind of, look at that. And if it's not Kriegsspiel, does it belong in the IKS? Well, we do have a gaming room, so people can play that. You're absolutely welcome to come here, and you can play Monopoly if you want on the server. We don't mind. That's why it's here. Um, but yeah, these questions are important because they help us to set boundaries for the organization and the activities that we have. Because otherwise, we become, if you try to be everything to all people, you dilute yourself to the point that you're nothing. So, we don't want to do that because you get into all kinds of issues. And it's more practical than philosophical, even though I'm speaking of it in philosophical terms. Let's see here. Robert says that's because they are dumb. It only makes Monopoly last longer if you don't play the rules. Right, absolutely. You got to play by the rules. You got to auction the properties and so on. And Robert says my response to the disaster is to change Marshall's grandpers. I don't know what a grandper is, but okay. Achilles says double blind Monopoly with fog of war and an umpire. Robert, I know you're having some fun. No problem. All right.
Someone's going to make that sometime on RKS, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I don't even know what it is. But double blind Monopoly, I wonder how that would work, Achilles. That seems like it would be exciting. Like, do I stealthily creep up to Boardwalk? Do I peek around the corner at it? Do I look for signs that it's owned? Is the yard overgrown? you know? Robert says adult pampers, diapers. Okay. Yes, change my diapers for sure. Anyway, Peter, what do you think, man? If you were to be asked to give a definition for Kriegsspiel, what is and what is not Kriegsspiel, how might you answer that? I know it's a little bit of a pop quiz, but I think if anyone can answer it, it's you. You've been playing Kriegsspiel probably for longer than I have. Um,
Okay.
how would you answer it?
Uh, I would first say you just need to experience it. I would say it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but on a army command level,
Hmm.
something like that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
you need to experience. Much like you need to try to explain to someone about Dungeons and Dragons. It's not an easy thing to do. They just need to experience it, and either
right,
they get it or they don't.
right. Well, I think that's the cool thing about Kriegsspiel is players don't need to know any rules to play. And it's similar with D&D. In D&D, you really don't need to know the rules. Only the game master, the dungeon master, has the book with the scenario written out and the different paths you can take. And then when you kind of stray off that path a little, the dungeon master makes a decision. But at the end of the day, other than some basic rules for how you make decisions in the game, well, you roll a die and here's the odds for the outcome. Otherwise, um, it's kind of an open-ended event, and the umpire kind of runs it. He's the conductor. He runs it. Whereas the in actual Kriegsspiel, uh, there's no rules at all for you to learn. So that's where the two are kind of close together. In that you can just show up and play. You can show up tomorrow and say I want to play D&D, and these guys will say, okay, let's build your character. Here's your stats, and here's your D20 or your bag of dice, and let's play. And you can play just as effectively and competently as anyone else. And it's the same with Kriegsspiel. Is you show up, and
Made
if you
D&D, I've made D&D even easier, Marshall. As in, I don't even give my players any stats on their character. I just tell them either they're strong or they're good with a bow, and
mm-hmm.
that's all they really know about their character. But I have all the stats on them, so you can make it even easier, even more like Kriegsspiel
Yeah,
in that way.
and I kind of like that approach because you get away from some of the number crunching. I play D&D right now. I'm playing a little D&D campaign in person with some friends. It's actually the first or second time I've actually done that. Um, and there's number crunching that goes on in the group. We sit around the table, and the dungeon master is like, "Well, this has happened. What do you want to do?" And then we're sitting there and we're looking at our stat sheets and like, "Well, why don't you do this because you have a 15 or you have a 2 or whatever." And there's number crunching, and in real life you don't have time to sit and crunch numbers, especially when you're in combat. And I like the idea of having that uncertainty, having to make those snap decisions and not being able to crunch numbers. I think the accountants tend to ruin gaming. If you've ever
You should
played,
find my one. You should have a go at one of mine sometime, perhaps.
I know, right? Yeah, well, we got auto coming up, and then yes, we're gonna have to get in there with yours. You should run one. And in fact, I think I told you this morning online, get into the test kitchen and put it up, which is the purpose.
Yeah. I've set it up on a separate server, so I just need to transpose it into the test server. Um,
Either way,
and
if you want to keep it on your server, you can do that too. But you're invited here. That we have the test kitchen, and the purpose of the test kitchen is to run explore concepts. We just did Star Wars, and the thing that people have to know with the test server is we might not finish the games. We're really there to test ideas and concepts and kind of flesh things out and really see if something works. So that's kind of the big difference, though, is that typically when you play an IKS branded game, you're pretty much guaranteed that we're going to play to a resolution point. Whereas in this stuff, we're really kind of playing to test mechanics and ideas. However, if we have enough fun with it, we just kind of keep going. We go until we write it until it dies, if you will. But yeah, absolutely. Come in here if you want and set up your channels and everything. And anyone in the IKS is welcome to come use this server for that purpose until we run out of space. But if people want to set up their own servers, that works too. I don't have an issue with that at all. So there you go.
Yeah, I'll move it across. It'll be good to have it in there. The
Yeah,
little,
get you some more exposure and participants as well. So
exactly.
yeah, I do. The entire purpose of the IKS is to fill the world with Kriegsspiel so I can stop umpiring and I can play. I'm tired of umpiring, guys. I've been umpiring for like the better part of 2 decades now. I'm done. I want to retire. I want to play. I don't get to play. So you guys do Kriegsspiel. And don't worry too
But
much about the
that's to
academics.
say that umpiring isn't fun, though, Marshall. And obviously, you know that umpiring is almost as fun as playing, and maybe even more so sometimes.
It is. It is. It's like you have people who like different kinds of alcohol, and I think it's kind of like that. Um, there's just some people who like beer. There are people who prefer wine, and it's like that. But both are a lot of fun. Umpiring, getting to play God is its own fun, but also playing as a player is its own fun. Especially if the updates come at you quickly. If the umpires are on top of the game and the umpires are as engaged, if everyone's kind of on that same level of engagement, man, you really get a fun game. The problem is when games get really big, the turns get really long, you have varying levels of engagement, and then of course the game drags and it's not as fun. But that's a discussion for another time. But I do think it's a worthy one we have to explore. Because some of us are running monster games, and those monster games you can wait weeks between updates, and it's really, really tough. It's a challenge. We have run some monsters quite successfully, but I do think smaller is better. Hence the K22 system, which is designed for those smaller games. It tends to just have a better experience. You're picking quality over quantity when you do that. But again, I digress. Let's take a final look at the comments. Um, Achilles tells me that when I walk up to Boardwalk and peek around the corner, I'm stopped by security at the gate. Achilles says, Creeks feels like pornography. You know it when you see it. Yeah. Robert is finished with the first turn. Soldiers are bored. Cigarettes are running low from boredom. Okay. And Achilles says, if they are lighting up cigarettes, they are violating noise discipline, not to mention the enemy can smell the smoke from a long ways away. Well, hey, maybe they want you to smell the smoke, Achilles. Who knows? Well, anyway. All right. Well, folks, a little inside baseball there. But I want to thank you all for tuning into today's podcast. I'm going to sign off for now. I have a busy day ahead of me, busy week to come. But yes, we're going to be kicking this off today, the first-person shooter Kriegsspiel, and we're going to see how far we can get through this, and if we can actually chain together multiple scenarios and see uh, who is the best soldier in the IKS. All right, well, Peter, thank you for popping on here to share some thoughts and take a pop quiz with me. And I want to thank everybody who watched and spoke in the comments, Dave and Robert and Achilles, Peter, Otto. Good luck with your game. I do want to encourage people to get into Otto's game, so I'm going to wrap up so people have a chance to do that. I wish I could play, but I cannot. But if I could, I absolutely would, and it should be a good time. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you all on our next adventure. Bye for now.